2:00, so if we make a start. If I could just first of all welcome you to the first meeting of the Harbours Sub Committee, a subcommittee of the Economy, Environment and Infrastructure Committee, whose remit is to act as the duty holder in relation to the Council's responsibility under the Port Marine Safety Code. And if I could just hand over to our Governance Officer, the first item of business is the appointment of a chair to the committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can I have nominations for a chair? Councillor Prentice.
I'll move Craig.
Any other nominations? Are members agreed? Okay, Craig Peacock is going to be chair of the Harbours Sub Committee.
Okay, members, thank you for that nomination. Councillor Dick.
Before we go on any further, I notice in the list of members in the front there we've a permanent vacancy. Is there any way that the committee could agree to maybe ask if there's anybody else who's interested to fill that vacancy? If the NAG group don't want it, surely we can see if we can find somebody who is interested.
I'll take advice from governance.
I'll have to look into that and come back to you on it, but possibly it might mean we have to go back to the parent committee to make that decision.
We'll take that on board, Ian, and we'll put that as an action note. Okay. Thank you, members. Before we start, I presume this meeting is being recorded, and therefore members need to take notice of that, and it will subsequently be made for public listening. Okay. Can I take the Sederunt and Apologies, please?
We have 5 members present. We are quorate. Councillor Crothers is not present, but may be along later in the meeting.
Okay. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. Moving on, item 4, delegation to the Harbours Sub Committee. It's a fairly straightforward report here, but I'll ask Stephen if there's anything to add to the report.
No, as you say, Chair, it's a straightforward report, really just for members to note the remit that they have delegated to them from full council.
Okay, I'll open it up to members' questions. No? Okay, members happy to go to the recommendations. Are members happy to note the remit of the Harbours Subcommittee as detailed at 3.2 of the report? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 5, it's an update on the Port Marine Safety Code. It's to provide members with the findings of the recent Port Marine Safety Code audit of Stranraer and Kirkcudbright harbours undertaken by Martime and Coastguard Agency, and to note the works to achieve compliance. I'll ask Stephen if there's anything further to add.
No, nothing to add to this report, Chair, thanks.
Okay, then I'm happy to open it up to members, and as of this morning, we have David Foster, our designated person, along here, who I'm sure will help to answer any questions that you may have. Ian?
Yeah, I have two things. First on the Loch, I take it that we're just noting the findings of the Port Marine Safety Code and Compliance Audit. We're not actually dealing with the issue of the HRO at this particular stage. Can that be correct?
Yes, I would say that's fact, because we have that as a later report coming forward for that. So it's to note the recommendations put forward by the compliance and the council's response to those, and the actions we're taking to mitigate those responses. Yes, George?
Actually, it's just a question about the duty holder. Again, I mean, we as trustees are the duty holders. Am I correct in that?
David, would you like to answer that?
Yeah.
As I understand it, you are taking on the duties of the roles of the duty holder as laid down in the Port Marine Safety Code, which you got a copy of today.
Yeah.
As I explained to this morning, there's a slightly different, your role is slightly different to that of a public or a private port or a trust port, where you've got the very straightforward structure of a board, a chief executive and a harbour master. Yours lies slightly different to that. But I think in basic terms, that I think that's what you should be expecting to do, is to consider yourself to be the duty holder in that. Whether your responsibilities and how you abrogate them and your advice from your own legal advice that you've had, I can't really comment on, because it is slightly different than for a private or a trust pool.
Just following on from that, Chair, what would be the consequences for us as individuals if something happened at Kirkcudbright Harbour, or something disastrous happened at one of the harbours? What could the consequences be for us as individuals being duty holders?
I'll bring Stephen in to answer that one.
Councillor Prentice, thanks. Yes, I mean, it was an issue that was raised before, and I think possibly as recently as back as the June EEI committee, it was discussed there as well. And we took further advice on that, and it's at item 3.4 in the report that we're looking at here. We've taken advice from our own marine solicitors. We have external solicitors who advise us on harbour matters, and also the council insurance officer. And we've identified that the only way that a member could be held individually liable for the actions of the duty holder would be if there was a serious dereliction of duties. My understanding is that would be similar with other external bodies or committees that the elected members sit on, that as long as there wasn't that dereliction of duties, or that serious dereliction of duties, then in effect we're acting to discharge through this committee the role of the duty holder in an efficient manner.
Yes, Ian.
Just going to the Marico Marine report by the consultants this morning, the issue of Garlison Harbour that was remarked on in here, the relations with Harbour Observer, particularly with mooring holders, appeared strained. It came to my attention this morning when I was discussing it with a group. One of the local members there had indicated that there are some serious concerns with a contractor which is currently being used to deal with the harbour wall, I believe it is, and it's precluding some of the scallop boats from getting in. I don't necessarily know if it's appropriate to be bringing that up at this particular point, but is this issue being addressed, and is there any end at sight?
I'll bring Stephen in on that one, Ian.
So I was just, yes, I had a brief update this morning on the situation at Garlison with the contractor that's working there, and they've put forward some suggestions as to how they would like to see the remedial works been taken forward. I'm not quite sure that we would, our engineering and design, our consultancy would agree with that, and I think there probably has to be a bit of debate with them about how we progress those works, the remediation works to be taken forward. So that's probably something that we need to update the committee on, just as we seek a resolution on that. There's been a kind of breakdown in the contract in terms of the contractor-client relationship, and it's how best to mitigate that, whether we have the works completed by another contractor and then take matters forward, or whether we continue to negotiate for a resolution with the existing contractor. So that is something that is live, and just as early as this morning I saw an email on that, and just setting out the options that we might have to take that forward. How it's affecting the scallop boats, I could maybe ask the Harbour Master just to comment on that.
Yeah, the issue with the scallop boats is that the part of the harbour wall that is being reconstructed is where the visiting scallop boats usually land over winter time. Now, obviously, that part of the wall is closed, and the section of wall around the corner, which isn't as sheltered, we can't use that because of the work compound. They can't get the articulated lorries around to take the catch. So I've done a notice to mariners to advise basically harbour users that, to basically use alternative ports for the time being, because we can't guarantee they're going to be able to get in and land.
Ask that the local members be appraised of the situation. Would be helpful. One of my group members this morning asked if we could keep them up to date with how things are progressing.
Yes, I'm sure that Keith, you'll be able to do that. So basically what we're asking for is to update the local ward members on the progress of the works to the wall in the harbour, and what actions have been taken for scallop boats, etc. coming in. Okay, can you take that on board, please? Yes? Can I have assurances? Yes? Yes, thank you. Okay. Yes, Patsy?
Yes, it's just I noticed on page 6, it's about port entry and sailing, and I noticed there isn't a formal checklist for visiting craft. Is that, are you talking about big craft, or are you talking about sailing craft? Because I have friends that have used Kirkcudbright on a number of cases and found it very efficient, so I just wonder what more you're going to do.
Yes, Keith, please, yeah.
Yeah, that was picked up by the MCA. Really, we already have in place a very good harbour directory, which is used primarily by leisure visitors. The MCA wanted to see us have a formal checklist so that if somebody rings in, for instance, we can go down a formal checklist to make sure we tell them all the pros and cons and the dangers, etc., not just go from memory when we're talking to them over the telephone or the VHF. And that's now been set out for both Kirkcudbright and Stranraer and is available to the harbour staff, so when they take the calls, we can do that.
Okay. Any further members? I just one point on page 9 there, table 3. In the bottom paragraph there, it's to conduct a thorough review of navigation risk assessment, and it states in there that we could be getting a verbal update on this committee. Do we have that verbal update? Yes, Keith?
I've got the verbal update. I understand members have had a copy of this morning. Possibly.
Yes,
I can read down anyway.
Ian, can I just say, have you received a copy of that? Yes, yeah. Yes, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If we just go down it briefly. First of all, the whole process was well run. There was a good attendance and good input from the stakeholders who we consulted with. Taking Kirkcudbright, yes, there is a slight movement of the channel by the lifeboat station, which will be taken into account as part of this process. Again, historically, we've had some conflicts between leisure boats and fishing vessels. Again, they've been recorded in the incident log, and we're looking at those as and when they occur. I'll jump to the big one on here, which is the health and safety concerns. We have ongoing issues on the quayside with health and safety operations. It's something we are working on actively at the moment to try and improve. It's okay, but there's a lot of room for improvement going forward on that one. Garliston. The first two comments are historical items now. It's to do with allocation of berthing at the harbour, which have been dealt with by myself over the past 12 months in relation to people's positions on the waiting list. The condition of some moorings, there are excess ropes and lines on some of the moorings, and we'll be dealing with that. We'll be walking the moorings to ensure that any unused moorings haven't got anything erroneous attached to them. And we'll be looking to introduce that at all the harbours, a regular check of the moorings. The fishing vessels holding off in high spring tides, some of the fishing vessels have been putting lines out to the moorings to hold them away from the quay so they don't get battered against the quayside or end up on the top of the quayside. Again, working with Marico, I believe we've agreed a compromise between the leisure users and the commercial fishermen men over that, and we're putting that in place. Isle of Whithorn, the POTS problem in the harbour approaches is not an issue at the moment. It has been a historical one, and we will continue to monitor that. The issue with the screen rocks, really, I'm looking for recommendations from Marico on that and look to see what the assessment brings out. My view at the moment is the navigational marks are sufficient because they were put in place on the advice of the Northern Lighthouse Board. But we'll see what the risk assessment brings out and see whether it's rated as too high a risk. Port William, the build-up of shingle, that was the item that was identified really as the major item from the navigation risk assessments. We believe that is the one that will come out with the highest risk. We talked this morning about which items will be, what will be our top 3. We believe that shingle bank will come out top. From my reports, you'll see we've got a planning application at the moment to deal with that, and that should be through by springtime, which allows to clear the harbour mouth as always. In the meantime, we've issued a navigation warning advising harbour users that the depths in the harbour mouth are not as published, and that covers our responsibilities for the time being. Razor fishermen, again, historic issue here. We've worked very closely with Police Scotland and a lot of other agencies, Marine Scotland, regarding controlling the razor clam fishermen. I wrote to them all at the beginning of last year, stating what was and was not acceptable within Port William Harbour. We've also written out to them all and made sure we've got insurance details from each vessel, which is a concern to the local users. And one of the main perpetrators of issues has in fact recently moved away down south. So we're hoping that the situation will continue to improve, but it remains an area of concern for the local harbour users. I think that covers the report. Hope that's okay.
Yeah, it's raised a few more questions. And Ronnie first, then Patsy.
Yeah, it's just a question on process. If you look at the recommendations, we've been asked to agree this report, but in page 6, and it'd be the third safety management system, once agreed, the duty holder of the new version 5, I know it goes on to item 6, but it's where we fit in. Sorry. Yep. It says the target date is the 31st of January, and our next meeting is the 21st of February. Is that right? So it's target date, and we've been asked to agree that particular thing. So would it be held over to the next meeting for us to agree that formally?
Stephen, are you able to come in?
We're asking you in the later report to agree the safety management system version 5. But what we're also saying is that it will be, it's like a live document, or it's always a document that's under review and will move forward with some frequency. There will be a version 6 will come along, and we'll pick that up with members at the next time we're sitting down at committee. But we want the safety management system. There's been the previous 4 or 5 versions. We want to just update that as continuously as possible, and that's what we're aiming to achieve with members' approval of that at the subcommittee today. But it will be influenced by the feedback and the full report back on the navigation risk assessments and any of the actions that arise out of that. But we will need to pick that up. That will bring the next subsequent version as it's developed back to the subcommittee.
Yeah, to come back, Ronnie.
Yep, that's fine. And I did say it flows into item 6, but I take it the target date then is we sign it off today. The target date is then for the others to buy into it, your employees and such like. That's the target date, is it?
Yeah, that specific item is to do with the fact the MCA recommend as part of their audit that myself and my team sign the SMS version 5. So in fact, we've all read it and we've all understood it, and that was their recommendation. But obviously, you have to agree it first, and once that is done, the target date is for me to get my staff to read and accept it.
Okay, thank you. James, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think it's important that obviously we have a time scale that we come to committee, and there'll be a limited number of committees per year. The SMS will inevitably, as Stephen said, be a live document, and clearly if we have new information that is going to make the SMS more robust, we don't want to hold off on using that information until we seek approval from committee. So there will be a kind of fine balance. And I guess there's potentially a governance issue with that a little bit, but we have an opportunity maybe to advise members through the emails that something else has come in. So particularly with the outcomes of the NRA work, if that comes over the next month, we don't want to hold back on that influence in the SMS until we meet in February, because that's important information. So it's that fine balance between the two. So you're approving this, you're approving the 5th version, but I think we need to work that.
Yeah, I think as from the presentation this morning, we all realise that this is a live and moving document, and will be updated as and when necessary, going through the process of that, depending on the outcomes of some of the issues that may have arisen from it. So in that respect, I'm sure if there's any any particular amendments to that going forward, that members of this committee will be advised of that. Patsy?
Yes, thank you. It's to do with Port William. I mean, I don't know whether we as a committee should be concerned about that or whether that's an operational issue that you've got to deal with, Keith. But it says, it would seem to me that, a lack of a current harbour observer is not helping the situation at all. I just wonder if you're looking to recruit somebody for that. And the other thing is, if they're landing razor clams, do you know that ahead of time that that's going to happen? I mean, and do you get a landing fee for that? And it just seems to me there's a bit of a cowboy outfit going on here, and I'm not entirely sure where the responsibility lies.
Well, that's an interesting choice of words, Patsy. Yeah. Anybody would like to attempt to answer that or not? Okay.
Yes, cowboy is probably the correct word on that one. We don't know in advance when they are coming into land. We've had discussions locally about putting signs up so that when people come in the port, they ring one of the team to advise they're actually in the port, because they're coming in and basically berthing where they think they will berth, and it's in the wrong place. We are not taking landing fees at the present time. It is physically impossible to take the landing fees because no way of checking them at the present time, because we have nobody on site. They could be landing 10 boxes, they could be landing 20 boxes, and I don't have the resource at present to have somebody standing there on the quayside counting the boxes. The harbour observer, the position with the Maccas at the present time is that there is still a harbour master at Port at Isle of Whitthorn and Garliston, and we're just moving now to resolve the structuring down at the Maccas, which is moving towards the harbour observer roles, which were sanctioned, God, which committee? Quite a long time ago now. But at the present time, the port is being covered by the harbour masters at Garliston and the Isle of Whitthorn.
If I can come back to her, is it your responsibility or is it ours as a committee to make sure that this harbour is run properly? And it's not that you're not doing it; it's just that you're not able to do it. But we should. I don't know where the responsibility lies. Perhaps we could have some advice.
I mean, from this morning's presentation, we as a harbour authority and as a committee for that, we are responsible for the strategic oversight of the management of the harbours that within our powers, which is the 5 harbours that are listed. Keith's responsibility is the operations of those, and his responsibility for the health and safety of everything that goes on round about the harbours, and it's our responsibility to make sure that he is carrying out his works to the duty and aligning with the Port Marine Safety Code that we've been discussing. Although we're not fully compliant with that at the moment, but we are working towards that, and that's what part of these documents are about. So. Keith, yes.
Can I just confirm? Yes, I view the management of the razor fleet as an operational matter, and I say we have taken a lot of steps in line with Marine Scotland, Port Police, Customs and Excise, HMRC. The list goes on. The spotlight, you might say, has been very much shone on these razor boats, as resulting in one of the major operators that has actually had his licence taken off him from one boat because of threatening and aggressive behaviour towards Marine Scotland staff. They removed his licence, and he has actually moved away from the area. So, although there is work to be done, the position at the present time is far better than it was, say, 2 years ago. And I will continue to be working closely on it.
Okay, I'll just bring David in.
But the other thing is that we should be making money off this. If they're landing, we should be making money.
David, would you like to come in?
Sorry, pressed the wrong button. I think the first thing is we talked this morning about local enabling legislation. I think you want to be clear about what you have the powers over and what you don't have powers over. You don't have powers over illegal fishing and whether it's a cowboy operation and how they're getting those fish. What you've got to have is a port which is safe for them to go in and out, or if it's not safe, at present you have that the sandbar over you might need dredging or something like that. You've got the right notice to mariners out. So that's where your, inverted commas, responsibility finishes. It's other people look after the legality of the fishing and that side of thing, and also the fitness of the boats. They fall under the MCA. So I think you've got to run a safe port. The fact that they're coming in and doing something outside which is questionable is not your direct responsibility. There are other agencies whose job it is. But it's nothing to stop you, just like with port state control, there's no reason why you shouldn't, if you suspect something going, you report it. Just like if you have a ship that comes in that you think is unfit, you report it to the MCA and they do the enforcing, not you.
Thank you. Just at this point as well, I think I'd like to say that I'd like to thank Keith, because we all receive his weekly reports, which gives us update on operational matters going on throughout our harbours across the region. I think it is very informative and very helpful, and it keeps us up to date with everything as it's happening. So thank you for that on behalf of the committee. Can we move to recommendations then, please? Can we note 2.1? Agree 2.2? Note 2.3? Note 2.4. Okay, thank you. Moving on, item 6, approval of the Dumfries and Galloway Council Harbours Marine Safety Management System. I'll ask Stephen, have you anything else to add to the report?
Yes, Chair, thank you. If I could. Within the purpose of the report, we talk about the verbal update, and that was referenced in the previous report as well. So Keith has given that kind of update on the navigation risk assessments. The other matter I would like to draw your attention to is in putting the appendix together, when it's been printed, it seems that the appendices to the appendix itself appear before the main text. So it's actually all the text is there for the safety management system, but at page 71, the safety management system starts and the text runs. And then prior to that, when the reports have been compiled and put together, it would seem that the appendices to the safety management system have come in front of that. So all the reports there, and it's referenced. It's just that the order, as it appears in these papers, is slightly mixed up.
So that's the front cover, basically.
The front cover is on
Yes,
page 71,
page 71,
and then the text runs through, and then it's the appendices that sit in front of that.
Thank you. I'll open it up to members' questions. There is one thing that I think is worth noting. I mean, it is a very detailed report going through the whole management system. There's a lot of information, a lot of statistics there. It's very worthwhile having, and the various harbours are alluded to separately as well. So you can, if there's a particular harbour you had interest in, you can take that through. And there is a table of hazards, etc., starting off on page 98, I think it is, slightly overprint. So it's a document that I think is worth members keeping hold of, so they can reference back to it in future if they've any need to. Yes, James.
Sorry, Chair. This was obviously for approval at committee, but now that assuming that we approve this at committee, you approve this at committee, we will provide you with copies of this document. I think you already have ring binders. We'll provide you with updated copies to insert into the ring binder.
Okay, thank you for that.
And we'll get them in the right order as well.
Yes. Yeah, and I've just had confirmation it will be updated on the website as well. Okay. Ian, Dick?
I think we just agree with the recommendations. Good piece of work.
Can you run it?
Just before we dash off, I like the way it's set out, recognising the risk, but it's moderate and so forth, and the actions that might need to be taken. But it's easy to understand, and so if we can understand it, we're sure the fishing fraternity and what do you call them? Sailor types.
Yes, I would agree with those comments.
So,
yeah, certainly.
Yeah, it's quite easy to understand. Good.
Okay, no further members? Can we go on to the recommendations then, please? It's to agree the latest version of the safety management system as detailed in paragraphs 3.1 to 3.4. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to item 7. It's an update on the Harbour orders for Stranraer and Loch Harbour and Kirkcudbright Harbour. I'll ask Stephen if there's anything to add.
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing further to add to the report itself. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll open it up to members. Ian, Dick.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just in relation to the Loch Ryan, I understand from 3.12 that we're looking at these 3 bullet points. Is that correct? The other thing is that there was mention of the establishment of the harbour area that Dumfries and Galloway Council is responsible for being limited to the roundabout the East Pier. Am I correct in saying that EEI, or FES as it was then a couple of years ago, had agreed that the area that the council should remain responsible for, because of the ferry company, the Stena Ferry Company moving up the Loch, that it was sensible that the ferry companies took care of the north half of the Loch? But was there not an agreement at the FES committee that the council should look at a point from the Scar just below Kirkcudbright across to the east shore and down? And the reason for that, because if I understand correctly from a former member of this council some time ago, the reason why Dumfries and Galloway maintained the Harbour Authority was because of the development of marine and leisure activities, which may at some point include, and it was mentioned that they might like to try and invite Formula 2 motorboat racing in. I don't know whether that was the case, but I think that was the understanding as to why we should retain a larger part south of the ports. Can you just confirm anyway that that was the case from a couple of years ago, and what are we actually proposing in here?
Okay, James, are you able to answer that?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dick here. We've actually flipped and flopped quite a bit on Loch Ryan in terms of what the statutory harbour authority area should be. Just taking it back a little bit, the MAIB report from 2004, from the incidents in 2003, recommended a single harbour authority for the whole of the Loch be established, and that the local authority takes the lead on that establishment. But in the intervening years since 2004, not a lot of progress has been made, although it's been discussed quite extensively with Stena and P&O, and things have changed with Stena and P&O. Clearly, Stena moving further up the Loch, no longer using Stranraer. Work by us as an authority to determine that we probably are the harbour authority for the whole of the Loch. None of this was addressed at the time of P&O initially, and then Stena subsequently establishing cutouts within the Loch for their own statutory harbour authority areas. So the MAIB, the MCA, or Transport Scotland didn't flag up again the findings of the MAIB report from 2004 to establish a single harbour authority. So it's not. I don't think anybody is particularly covered themselves in glory with where the situation we've got now is. To add to the confusion, there is still Stena have responsibilities around the East Pier, an approach channel and a turning area sort of at the halfway up the Loch, which they are the statutory harbour authority for. So part of their statutory harbour authority starts encroaching upon parts of where the council has the West Pier and so on. The piece of work that we did at the end of last year was a navigation risk assessment, which was basically what was came out of discussions with the MCA, was a full navigation risk assessment for Loch Ryan, which was done in conjunction with Stena and P&O, and it was Marico that did that work for us. Their recommendations were, rather than taking the southern end of the Loch for the local authority as the statutory harbour authority, it should take a similar approach that Stena and P&O have taken and take a small area close to its own area of responsibility, which would be the West Pier and the Marina, and probably including the East Pier as well, dependent on how that moves forward with respect to the ownership by Stena and the council, and on all the agreements that are going on with that we will keep out of this discussion. The new legislation allows a harbour authority to so Stena can get rid of its responsibilities as a harbour authority, but alternatively, if we would promote a harbour revision order for the south end of the Loch, just to include a small area around, we could remove Stenor's responsibility. As to whether we would need, as you suggest, to be the harbour authority for the whole of the south end of the Loch to allow, for example, regattas, my understanding is there would be no requirement for us to be the harbour authority. That could still be classed as effectively open seas. The recommendations from the navigation risk assessment, we want to very much keep where our expertise lies. And in this respect, I'd almost say our expertise says we can manage people bringing boats into the harbour area to come to moorings, to use the slipway. But as they start going out into the southern end of the Loch, if we are the harbour authority for that, then we're going to take on responsibilities that perhaps we don't need or want to take on, and we don't have the resource to take on. We're talking, I suspect if we still had Stena or P&O, if we still had Stena coming down into the Stranraer Harbour, you've got a different issue there. You've got a much more likelihood of sort of engagement between ferry traffic and leisure craft. But there is no requirement for us to be the statutory harbour authority for the southern end of the Loch, and that's, as the report says under 312, the way that we are currently progressing with pulling together some documentation that's sitting with Stena and P&O for comment. In fact, P&O have commented, Stena are due to comment back, and that will be the basis that we will go to the MCA and Transport Scotland to set out how we would like to progress a harbour revision order. There's no point in us progressing a harbour revision order until such time as we've kind of got an understanding from the MCA that what we're proposing is sensible. And I think I'll maybe just ask David to add a little bit to that, because obviously David I don't think he was directly involved with the navigation risk assessment. We can probably back up a little bit the information about why we've kept it around the harbour.
First of all, to answer your immediate question, if you were to have regattas and things based in the southern part of Loch Ryan, would you need to be the statutory harbour authority? And the answer to that is no. And a good example, say, other than for the Olympics, a large number of yacht races and things takes place off Weymouth in the south of England, outside the Port Authority area. So you've just got, so that's been carried out in the open sea. And it's the same as part of Cows Week and all the rest. So there is no requirement for you, just because it's been held near to you, for you to be the statutory harbour authority for the area in which it's being carried out. In fact, the trick is to have the smallest possible statutory harbour authority area that you can possibly get away with. I mean, that sounds rather cheap, but you don't want to take on, because you're taking on an awful lot of else. Now, the report here that James written is absolutely hits the nail completely on the head on all the subject here. But as you can see, it's a very tricky tricky problem. As I see it, that probably by law you currently are the statutory harbour authority, and haven't been exercising your duties in accordance with the Port Marine Safety Code in there. You either take since about 1850 something, or you could take some of your advice back to 16 something. But where we are at present is that you haven't been doing it, and you've been conducting really thinking of your operation is close by. When the two harbour authorities, or the three harbour authority areas, were put in there, I think people missed the fact that you were the statutory harbour authority 3 times. Once when they put in the original one, well, actually it was already there with the Railway Act one, and then the next one was the P&O one, and then the Stena, with those little boxes up at the northern end. So you've got 3 cutouts, as you all so rightly call them. So we're in a difficult position, because the thing is, you've got to convince the MCA that you don't need to be a statutory harbour authority within Loch Ryan, and just want to have a small area around here, which I think is the ideal solution as far as you're concerned. However, when you get rid of that responsibility, the person who takes it back is the MCA. Now, are they going to be keen to take it back? And that is the problem. So it's a tricky negotiation you've got to have, because clearly, as you're at present, you aren't really structured to deal with ferry operations, things like that. and how you would run that. And we remember I was talking this morning about pilotage and pilotage exemption and all these other things. These are all quite demanding and specialist subjects, which clearly the last thing, as James says, you want to be taking responsible for. So this needs careful to try and get away the sunny uplands where you want to go. In other words, the whole of Loch Ryan, it becomes, inverted commas, open water, except for the cutouts to the P&O and the Stena one, hopefully, and then a small one, taking away the old Stena one at the south and putting one round your own little area around there. That's the sunny upland you want to get to. Whether you can convince the powers that be that that's where they are willing to go is the trick. Otherwise, you might find yourself still having to administer the whole of Loch Ryan, and then there are ways ahead. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have vessel traffic services and pilotage and things, but it's much more difficult. So I think how these negotiations are taking place are very important, and it's got to be done very, I suppose, cleverly as well. And the good news is that this here makes the case, and we've got a decent risk assessment now to base your cases on, which I think is a much better position than we were, say, 2 or 3 years ago, when it would have just been feeling in the water when you were discussing it with people. But it is going to be difficult. And that's my opinion, not as much as David Foster's opinion, rather than designated by the designated person thing is something slightly different. But that's how I see where we're at present, or where you are at, or we are at present. Would you agree?
Yes.
James?
Thanks, Chair. So part of your way is the bullet points outlined in 3.12, which is the establishment of Loch Ryan Safe Navigation Committee. How would that sit within the maritime law, or for that matter, law in general? Is that your way of trying to convince the MCA that you would have a plan to make that open sea?
James.
Chair, thank you. Where we sit at the moment, quite a number of years ago, you'll see there's a Loch Ryan Ferry Navigation Committee, and that was established by the ferry companies. And that's the masters of the ferry companies principally, and they're hosted by alternately by the two harbour authorities. I know we call them Stena and P&O, but the ferry companies are separate entities. People operating the ferries technically are separate entities from the harbour authorities that they run in and out of. Yeah, still probably for tax purposes, but that's the way it works. And that Loch Ryan Ferry Navigation Committee has been running for some considerable amount of time, 10 plus years. We, in discussions with the harbour authorities, Trevor Wright from P&O and Andy Humphreys from Stena, discussed and came up with the idea of a Loch Ryan Safe Navigation Committee, which was principally the 3 harbour authorities, and they would meet on a biannual basis and deal with any issues associated with operating the loch it would be a sort of tripartite, but not a statutory harbour authority. It's still open, classed as open waters. Sitting below that would be 2 committees. One would be the already established Ferry Navigation Committee, and principally they deal with, having attended their meetings, they deal with issues such as ferries passing each other, issues they've maybe had with other vessels in the area, but and problems that maybe had with depth of water coming into the harbour areas and so on. The other committee that we would look to have, which would also meet on that 6-monthly basis, would be a harbour users group, so Loch Ryan Marine Safety Forum, and that would be any stakeholder who was within the loch. So it could include the water sports group, the sailing clubs, there'll be open invites to a lot of people, environmental side of things, so SEPA, we could, these side of things. And we would look to basically improve the understanding, so there's opportunities to have presentations from, say, a master of one of the ferries to come in and speak to them, to explain to the users, look, these are the issues you cause us when you sail in and out of the loch and you don't stick to the west side of the loch and you get in our way, or these are the problems that will happen, and just building up an understanding. we are quite controlled in Loch Rann. You know, people will generally be launching from or coming out of Stranraer. There's a lot of opportunity there to provide them information on what's going on, and these committees will help establish that kind of information. So, for example, if there's changes to ferry operating because of a vessel in, you know, dry dock or something like that, that's the kind of information that might change the timetables, and that would be the kind of information we'd want to pass on to users at Stranraer. It's that kind of, you know, managing it there, much less so controlled by legislation, much more so controlled by, you know, engagement with stakeholders. And that is the recommendation, I think, that came out of the MCA a couple of years back. I would need to check the details of that, but it was a move away from legislating, you know, all the time to much more sort of cooperative working and so on. So that would be how we would look to establish that, and that's got a lot of buy-in from Stena and a lot of buy-in from P&O. That's where I'd like to see that progression. That's what we want to take to the MCA and to Transport Scotland and get this resolved.
Could I just ask on that, as we're going through this process, once we have a finalised idea of how we'd exactly like to take it and the area that we'd like to take in as a harbour authority, is there, once we submit that to the MCA, is there a time scale that they have to respond to that, or is it just an ongoing negotiation to get to an agreement?
It's an ongoing thing. They don't work to timescales because I think each question is different that they deal with. So I think it'd be not fair to ask them to come with this particular one. This is a tricky one. It's been going on for 10, 11 years, I think.
So it's a negotiated process.
It's a negotiated process, and I think it's choosing who within the MCA to see, not go down too low to start with. You want to get in there to somewhere at the head of navigation or level to right at the word go. But again, I think I can help and point to people to see and things like that.
Okay, thank you. Ronnie?
Sorry. It goes back to what we heard this morning about consultation and stakeholder engagement and stuff like that. If you read the local press from down there, I was just reading it between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, obviously they've read the papers and they know we're going to try and shrink the responsibility. So the question is, it's out there, is that it's not part of your public consultation because that's the press doing it, but clearly you've spoke to operators and users about shrinking it as part of what we agreed, well, what was discussed this morning.
At this stage, there hasn't been formal consultation on that matter. To be completely honest, at the moment, I would be struggling to see what difference it's going to make initially to the users in Stranraer Harbour. We have a certain amount of control measures at the moment, and we certainly do over the marina itself and where people can dock at the marina. But whatever happens at the moment, we are still constrained by the fact that technically Stena are the harbour authority around the East Pier, and for an approach to the East Pier, they still have responsibilities for the perches with the lights on as you come down the loch, which we use to guide the ferry traffic. And we are technically the de facto harbour authority for the whole of Loch Rann. So all these things are already out there. I suspect that we will have to do some further consultation like that, but the outcomes of the navigation risk assessment were in fact published last year and were in the committee report 6 months ago. So we're not publishing anything we haven't already published before. But yeah, we will take further engagement. I guess I'm not entirely sure where that would lead to the further engagement in that respect, but I suppose we'll see.
I mean, I would expect that from the process and whatever the outcome happens to be, there would be no detriment to the harbour users in any case. You know, we'd only be enforcing that if we were to bring in the East Pier within our harbour order, as we're looking to do. So there'll be no detriment to the actual harbour users and what we're trying to do here at all, I wouldn't have thought.
No, far from it. I mean, in fact, much more, I think it would be much clearer for them, and issues such as abandoned vessels in the harbour and such like could be much more readily dealt with. And that gives, when Keith and his staff, Leslie specifically down there, have the defined powers, then to be honest with you, the 99% of the users who are reasonable people will be happier that they can be, that the 1% who aren't reasonable can be actually told what to do and where to get off, so to speak, one of a more technical term.
Yeah, can I just support that? Operations down at the Macus harbours are a lot cleaner, a lot simpler by the fact we have harbour empowerment orders in place. So moving towards a position where we do have a harbour revision order for a small area in Stranraer will be significantly improve our position and our day-to-day operating position as well.
Yes, Ronnie.
Yeah, that's reading the article in the press, the Stranraer paper I read in our group room. That's fine, and that's what we've been asked to do, and I'm quite happy for that. And what you've said is something we should be supporting. It's just it's out there. I know it's out there before, but it's in the press. People don't read reports or go to websites as much as you think they do. But no, I'm happy with what's being done. I'm just saying it was recorded in the press, so the decision we make today, and equally, will have to go somewhere.
Thank you. We've got Patsy next.
Thank you. I'm looking at the Kirkcudbright Harbour revision order and particularly paragraph 3.18, where it seems to talk about, the notice has been put forward and Transport Scotland have dealt with it in one thing or another, or will be dealing with it. And then there's to be draft notices and a consultation period. And I just wonder who you're going to consult with, because surely this is something you have to bring in because you think it's necessary, and I would have thought it would be information as opposed to consultation. But it goes on to say that you might, timing thereafter could be anything from a couple of weeks to several months to negotiate with objectors. I mean, who's going to be, who are your main objectors?
I think I'll let David come in, but I think from this morning's presentation again, that consultation period is statutory under Scottish legislation, that period of time. But it would be for the harbour users themselves, the people that actually use the facilities within the harbour. But I'll let David come in, or James. Keith?
Yeah, my understanding is when we go for this harbour revision order, we do have to consult with stakeholders, and that can be everybody, including, like Marine Scotland, obviously Transport Scotland are dealing with it. But we've got people like the North Atlantic Salmon Trust, for instance, who look after the salmon run in the River Dee. And part of our consultation, for instance, when we did the dredging licence, or the renewal of the dredging licence for the harbour wall dredging, that had to go out to them as well, and they came back with not objections, but just input on it about trying to avoid, for instance, dredging between April and June. And it's those extra people that you don't think about sometimes are involved in the consultation.
Yes, David, would you like to add to that?
Again, what we're talking about today, this morning, is you consult and you might get interesting or positive or new information from your consultees. You might get some, inverted commas, nuisance ones, but you have to go through the process by law. I hate to say by law, but you know what I mean. You're required to do it by law. And also, it's a good idiot test to make sure you haven't missed anything as well. And not every comment doesn't have to be responded to. Some you will send it to Transport Scotland and say we have got 4 or 5 unresolved comments from people which we don't want to take forward. And when you forward it to them, you just add that to the list. And quite frankly, as I said to you this morning, is that my experience is you've always got a few unresolved ones, and you send it to the powers that be. In your case, it's Marine Scotland, and they with those outstanding. So as I say, every comment doesn't have to be responded to and taken into account, because sometimes some of them will be very selfish and not in the overall good.
Thank you. Ian Carruthers and then Ian Dick.
Thanks, Chairman. I had a question on 318 as well. It was, excuse me, in regards to just the timelines, when do we think that'll take place? Do we have any times and any more detail in regards to that? The 42-day consultation, is that past tense? Is it? As I read it there, I thought it's something we've got to go forward and do. In regards to the recommendations, which is ultimately where we make our decision, we're noting the work progress up to now, so we're not really making a decision. So we just wondered, and as far as this is concerned, Councillor Dick brought up points earlier. I remember seeing a plan with an outline with different options to far we should be going with our harbour revision audit. It's the whole harbour, the whole Loch, I think, at the moment is what we're saying. I think as we go forward, I'd like to know what dates, when will we see this back? Is it open-ended, as maybe being alluded to, or will it be quite a bit of time? And I think it would be important that we do actually see plans in regards to different options as it does come forward. Should it be really tight? Should it be wider? Should it be the whole Loch still? And the reasons why that would be the case. I mean, I'd feel more comfortable with the recommendations saying that we're asked to note the update of the work undertaken up to now, because I think that's what we're doing. It's an update in regards to, and also seek advice or have a clear understanding when the next report will come and what the contents of that will be, how far, the kind of time, how far advanced will we be compared to now. I think from a scrutiny point of view, we have to be kind of thinking on that, Chairman.
I'll bring James in a moment, but it might be difficult for him to give timelines if it's a negotiated process rather than, as we would normally through a committee process, we would ask officers for a report within a certain timescale. But as this is a negotiated process, that might be difficult for him to do that. And following on your second part of it, as we're just noting the updated position, I would expect that in due time there would be a full report that comes to this committee for agreement, which I presume would have a plan showing the area of the harbour that we would be taking on in our responsibility, and then I would expect that would go with a recommendation from this committee to EEI for a full approval. But I'll let Stephen or James come in.
Could I just come in, Chair, just initially? I think the situation, and James had said we'd been working on this for a number of years and we'd gone to a number of committees, PHE and S and EEI more recently. And I think it's a realisation of just how kind of serious the implications are for the Council in terms of the resources that would be required, has made us actually, delay, or not delay, but prolong or make sure we get right the way through that negotiation process with the MCA and the MEIB. And I think it was maybe a couple of years ago now, we went down to Southampton and we sat down with the MCA and the MEIB for half a day, and we ran them through all the kind of information that we had, what had changed in the interim. They weren't for making a decision there in terms of reviewing the recommendation, but we were setting out our stall in terms of all the things that had changed. And to a certain extent, looking at just half the Loch was, us taking a step back. Since then, the kind of more detailed work that's taken place with the navigation risk assessment and the work more recently done by Mariko, has made us reflect again on that in terms of what is inappropriate or what is the requirement on this council to resource the navigation risk management for the whole of the Loch, or as we feel, certainly as officers advising committee, that it is more appropriate that area is tailored back to what we are in terms of what James said earlier about where we have the right resources at the present time and the experience to run a marina, to run a harbour in that area with the slipway, and in time taking enough area that what's ever coming out of the Stranraer waterfront project in terms of the potential for marina extensions is the area that we focus on and manage to deliver the benefits for that waterfront regeneration project that we envisage. So I think it's against that background that there has been quite a lot of effort taken not to have the council bounced into a position where we're confirming or even seeking to operate and resource up to the level that the full harbour authority, statutory harbour authority area for the whole of the Loch, or even half of the Loch, would entail. So it's just that kind of context is where officers have been pushing that negotiation with the MCA and the MEIB. We've had meetings with Transport Scotland, and effectively they're quite open to what we're saying, but they wouldn't be in a position of promoting an order for us where they were still facing potentially an objection from the MCA. And I think it's for this committee, and as you say, well, and the full EEI committee, if we need to consider decisions beyond the remit of this committee, but it's for these committees to take advice from officers in terms of, our best advice in terms of what we think the right area is for us to be managing, and not bringing significant additional responsibilities onto the council that we don't feel are appropriate or are necessary coming out of the navigation risk assessments.
That particular point, I'm glad Steve's explained it in that way, but as a member of the council, we're sitting here today almost like we've got a statutory hat on, we've got a regulatory hat on almost, but at the same time we look at the report with a council hat on, is it built, the first number one priority, as we all know as members of the council, is building the local economy. And kind of tying it back into the point that Councillor Dick brought up earlier, maybe Weymouth and such like I'll keep a hold of the World Championships or whatever it may be, and it'll never be the case to come to Loch Ryan. But if there is a wider economic benefit by retaining the whole area of Loch Ryan as being the Harbour Authority, and that is in the benefit of that local area, the economy of that local area, something we should potentially look at. So I'm only looking at it from all kind of angles. I just want to make sure that the report does come forward, looks at everything. It looks at all aspects of it. We have got a regulatory role, so to speak, about looking here at Strategic Harbour Authority, but we have got with our council hats on as the local economy is fundamental, obviously.
Yes, Stephen.
You just reminded me of a further part of your question, Councillor Carruthers, was in terms of coming back to the committee with the detail of the areas that we looked at and the options. And I think that's certainly something that we can do. I think we've got to bottom out the argument that we're advancing with the MCA and the MEIB at the present time. And I think when we're looking for a committee decision, just to promote an order where we do have that backing, if we manage to take the negotiation in that direction, we can certainly come back with a history of the different areas we've looked at and the reasoning behind why we think it needs to be scaled back to something that is manageable for this council.
Ian, Dick?
Yeah, it's just to pick up on the point that Ronnie made about what appeared in the local press there. I would strongly recommend that there is consultation with users and all interested parties up in the West. I'm well aware from long experience of how the local media up there portray things. And this is a very important one.
Okay, we'll take that on board, James. Yes?
I think just coming back on your point, Councillor Carruthers, even if we want the Harbour Authority for the southern half of the Loch, we obviously only provide, we are the only providers of a sensible access to the water in terms of Stranraer Harbour. So things like regattas, the servicing of regattas and so on would have to come through our harbour to access that. So yes, the economic benefits of being able to build on that would be there, and through economic development we'd look to very much advertise that as a facility that would be suitable for that. Just the general boat storage area, the slipway, the boat lift and so on and so forth would be very positive. I think actually, just going back to the very beginning of your question, you were asking about timescales, and it was just picking up that in fact the part of the report you're picking up about the 42-day consultation period is referring to the Kirkcudbright Harbour revision order, which we're much further on with. So where we are with the Kirkcudbright Harbour revision order is that we have got a draft order produced that pretty much everybody's happy with. And it's just it's just Transport Scotland's legal team that are reviewing it. Once they've crossed those T's and dotted those I's, we would hope to then go through the formal process, and that's the 42-day period that I think Patsy was also picking up on. And yeah, we will deal with. I think it's unlikely we get objections to it, but the element of the Stranraer one is some time off yet, and there'll be a further report to this committee before we go to the stage of the Harbour revision order promotion.
Okay, no other members. Okay, can I take you to the recommendations, please? Members are asked to note the work being undertaken to complete harbour orders for Stranraer and Loch Ryan and Kirkcudbright. Okay, noted. Just before we finish, I have no further business, but just to thank members. I mean, this, as we know, this is the first meeting of this committee. As this committee moves forward, we will gain more experiences in handling with the harbour, and we'll be able to have a much thorough input to the reports that come our way. The next meeting of this is in February, and as I'm sure you're aware, it's a tour of our harbours, so I just ask members to come appropriately dressed. It won't be a formal meeting as we're having this afternoon. I'm sure questions and that can be taken during transportation between the different harbours and any issues that might be raised. Okay. Thank you.